The wind cut through Jerome's thin jacket like a knife. He pulled it tighter around his shoulders, knowing it wouldn't help much. November in Chicago was brutal, and he'd learned that the hard way during his 8 months on the streets. At 15, Jerome had gotten used to a lot of things he never thought he would. Sleeping on cardboard, going to bed hungry. The way people looked right through him like he didn't exist. But he never got used to the cold. He walked along the service road behind the old warehouses, his eyes scanning the ground for anything useful. Aluminum cans mostly. Sometimes he'd find other things people threw away, things he could sell or trade. It wasn't much, but it kept him going. His grandmother used to say he had a good heart. Too good, maybe. She'd raised him after his parents left when he was just a baby. When she died last spring, everything fell apart. The state tried to place him somewhere, but the system was overloaded. He bounced around for a few weeks before he just disappeared into the streets. It seemed easier than another temporary home where nobody really wanted him. The sun was setting now, and Jerome needed to get back to his spot before dark. The area near the abandoned factory where he usually slept. It wasn't safe, but nowhere really was. At least there he knew which corners to avoid. That's when he heard it. A woman's voice crying out, "Help, please, someone help me." Jerome stopped walking. Every instinct told him to keep moving. Getting involved in other people's problems on the streets could get you hurt. Or worse. But something about the desperation in that voice made him turn around. He followed the sound to a black, luxury car pulled off on the shoulder. Even in the dim light, Jerome could tell it was expensive. Real expensive. The kind of car he'd only seen in magazines. The driver's side door opened and a woman stepped out. She was dressed nice, wearing a long coat and heels that weren't made for standing on the side of a road. But what caught Jerome's attention was her belly. She was very pregnant. "Are you okay, ma'am?" Jerome called out, keeping his distance. He knew how he looked. Dirty clothes, messy hair, probably smelling like the streets. People like her usually called the police when they saw people like him, but she didn't look scared. She looked relieved. "Oh, thank God. Please, I need help. My tire went flat, and my phone died, and I've been here for over an hour. I can't get the spare out by myself, and I'm having pains." She grabbed her stomach and winced. Jerome's eyes went wide. "You mean like baby pains?" he asked, moving closer. "I don't know," she said, and he could hear the fear in her voice. "I'm only 7 months along. It's too early, but something doesn't feel right." Jerome looked at the flat tire, then at the woman, then down the dark road. There were no other cars, no houses, no help coming. His grandmother's voice echoed in his head. "When someone needs help, you help them. That's just what decent people do." "Okay," Jerome said, making a decision. "Okay, listen. I know where there's a store about a mile back. They're open all night. I can run there and get them to call for help." "A mile?" The woman looked like she might cry. "That's so far, and it's so cold. Jerome was already taking off his jacket. It was the only real coat he had, and winter was just starting. But he didn't think about that. He just draped it around the woman's shoulders. "Here," he said, "and take this blanket too." He pulled out the thin blanket from his backpack. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. "Get back in the car and lock the doors. Keep the hazard lights on. I'll be back as fast as I can, I promise." The woman stared at him, and Jerome saw tears forming in her eyes. "You do that for me. But you'll freeze out here?" "I'll be fine," Jerome lied. "I run fast. Keeps me warm." Before she could protest more, he took off running. His sneakers, worn so thin he could feel every pebble through the solace, pounded against the pavement. The cold bit into his skin through his t-shirt, but he pushed himself harder. When he reached the convenience store, the clerk looked at him suspiciously. A skinny black kid in dirty clothes, out of breath, no shoes that fit right. Jerome had seen that look 1,000 times. "Please," Jerome panted. "There's a pregnant lady stranded on Service Road. Her phone's dead and she's having problems with her baby." "You gotta call 911. The clerk hesitated. "Is this some kind of scam?" "No, I swear." "She's really in trouble. Please, just call them. Something in Jerome's voice must have convinced him, because the clerk finally picked up the phone. Jerome gave him the exact location, then turned to run back. Wait, the clerk called out. You want some water or something? But Jerome was already gone, racing back through the freezing night. When he got back to the car, the woman was still inside, wrapped in his jacket and blanket. She'd been crying. When she saw him, relief washed over her face. Help is coming, Jerome said, breathing hard. Ambulance should be here soon. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. They waited together, the woman sitting in the car with the door open, Jerome standing nearby. She asked him his name. Asked him where he lived. He was honest with her. Told her he was on the streets. You gave me your coat, she said softly. Your blanket. And you ran through the cold to get help? Why? Jerome shrugged. Because you needed it. When the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics moved quickly. They checked the woman, asked her questions, started getting her loaded onto a stretcher. She reached out and grabbed Jerome's hand tight. Thank you, she whispered. You saved us. You saved my baby? She pressed something into his palm. A business card. Please call me. Promise you'll call me. Jerome nodded, even though he had no phone. Even though he'd learned that promises from people with money usually meant nothing. Even though he knew she'd probably forget about him as soon as the ambulance doors closed as the red lights disappeared down the road, Jerome looked at the card in the glow of a streetlight. Expensive paper. Gold lettering. But he couldn't think about that now. He was freezing, his coat was gone, and he needed to find somewhere warm before he got sick. He tucked the card into his pocket and started the long walk back to his cardboard shelter, not knowing that this one night had just changed his life forever. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. Catherine Rodriguez lay in the bed, her hand resting protectively on her belly. The doctors had managed to stop the contractions. Her baby was safe, for now, but she couldn't stop thinking about the boy. The door burst open and her husband rushed in, his face pale with worry. David Rodriguez was a man who usually had everything under control. As the founder and CEO of Rodriguez Tech Industries, he'd built a billion-dollar company from nothing. But right now he looked terrified. Catherine, he breathed, rushing to her side. I came as soon as I got your message. Are you okay? Is the baby? We're fine, Catherine said, squeezing his hand. The doctor said everything's stable. But David, if it wasn't for this boy... Her voice cracked. I was stranded in the middle of nowhere. My phone was dead. I was having contractions, and I was so scared. And then this kid just appeared out of nowhere. She told him everything. About the flat tire. About being alone on that dark road for over an hour. About the teenage boy who'd given her his only coat and blanket and ran through the freezing cold to get help. He was just a kid, Catherine said, wiping her eyes. Maybe 15, 16, wearing clothes that barely fit. He told me he's homeless, David, living on the streets, and he still gave me everything he had. David sat down heavily in the chair beside her bed. He'd grown up poor himself before he made his fortune. He remembered what it was like to have nothing. But to give away your only coat in November? That took a special kind of person. Did you get his name? David asked. Jerome, Catherine said. I gave him my business card and made him promise to call me. But David, it's been 3 days and nothing. I keep checking my phone every 5 minutes. What if something happened to him? What if he's sick because he gave me his coat? David could see the worry eating at his wife. She'd always had a big heart. It's one of the reasons he loved her. Before they'd gotten married, she'd worked with homeless shelters and community centers. She'd given that up when his company took off and security became an issue, but he knew she still cared deeply about helping people. Let me make some calls, David said. I'll find him. By the next morning, David had hired the best private investigation team in Chicago. He gave them everything. Jerome's description. The location where Catherine had been stranded. Everything she could remember about that night. The investigators started their work immediately. They went to the area, talked to local businesses, showed Jerome's description around, but the boy seemed to have vanished. "It's like looking for a ghost," the lead investigator told David a week later. "Street kids move around a lot. They don't trust adults. Many of them don't want to be found." David understood that, but it didn't make it easier. Catherine came home from the hospital on strict bed rest. She was supposed to stay calm and relaxed. Instead, she spent her days worrying about Jerome. She'd pull out the copy of her business card, the one she'd given him, and wonder why he hadn't called. "Maybe he lost it," David suggested gently. "Or maybe he doesn't have access to a phone." "Then we need to find him," Catherine insisted. "David, that boy saved our daughter's life. And he's out there somewhere, probably freezing with no coat because he gave it to me." David had never been able to say no to his wife, but this time he didn't want to. The more he thought about Jerome, the more he needed to find him too. He started doing something he'd never done before. He began visiting homeless shelters himself. At first, his security team objected. It wasn't safe, they said. But David insisted. He'd show Jerome's description, ask if anyone had seen him. Most people just shook their heads. What David saw in those visits shook him. He'd donated money to homeless causes before, written checks from his office. But seeing it up close was different. The sheer number of young people living on the streets, kids who should have been in school, playing sports, thinking about their futures. Instead, they were worried about where they'd sleep and what they'd eat. He met teenagers who'd aged out of foster care with nowhere to go, kids who'd run away from abuse, young people who'd been kicked out for being gay or transgender. Each story broke his heart a little more. "I had no idea," David told Catherine one night. "I mean, I knew homelessness was a problem, but seeing these kids ... some of them are so young, and they're smart, talented, they just need a chance." Catherine could see the change in her husband. He'd always been a good man, but success had insulated him from certain realities. Now he was seeing them firsthand. "We should do something," Catherine said. "Not just find Jerome, but really do something to help." David thought about it for a long time. Then he did something that made his board of directors very nervous. He announced that Rodriguez Tech Industries would be launching a major initiative to address youth homelessness in Chicago. The board thought he was crazy. "This isn't our area of business," they argued. "Our shareholders expect us to focus on technology and profits." But David was firm. "We're doing this, and I'm personally overseeing it." He committed tens of millions of dollars, money for emergency shelters, job training programs, educational support, mental health services, everything he'd learned these kids needed during his visits. Catherine, even from bed rest, threw herself into the project. She used her old contacts from her nonprofit days. She organized a coalition of services, connected resources, coordinated volunteers. She worked from home, making calls, sending emails, video conferencing with social workers and community leaders. "If we can't find Jerome yet," she told David, "at least we can help kids like him." The first Rodriguez Foundation youth shelter opened in early December. David insisted on being there personally, despite the snow and cold. He walked through the facility, checking every detail. Warm beds, clean showers, a kitchen that served hot meals 3 times a day. Counselors who were trained to help, not judge. "No kid gets turned away," David told the staff. "I don't care about paperwork or red tape. If a young person needs help, we help them, period." He started visiting the shelter regularly, not for photo opportunities or press coverage. He kept it quiet. He'd show up in the evening and just talk to the kids there, listen to their stories, try to understand how they'd ended up on the streets. Every time he talked to a teenage boy, he wondered if this might be Jerome. He showed the description around, showed a sketch an artist had made based on Catherine's memory. But no one had seen him. Meanwhile, Jerome had his own problems. After that night helping Catherine, he'd gone back to his usual spot behind the abandoned factory. But 2 days later, everything changed. A group of older homeless men had been watching him. They knew he sometimes had a few dollars from collecting cans. That night they came for it. Jerome tried to fight back, but there were 3 of them. They took everything. His blanket was already gone, given to Catherine. Now they took his backpack, his sleeping bag, the few dollars he'd saved, and the business card. Jerome watched it flutter away in the wind, Catherine's card, his one connection to that night. He tried to grab it, but one of the men shoved him hard. By the time he got up, it was gone. Hurt and scared, Jerome knew he couldn't stay in that area anymore. Those men would come back. So he left everything familiar and moved to a different part of the city, a place where he didn't know the safe spots or the dangerous ones, where he didn't know which store owners might give you their day-old bread, and which ones called the cops. He ended up under a highway overpass with a small group of other homeless people. There was an older veteran named Ray who took pity on him. Ray had been on the streets for 5 years after coming back from overseas. He taught Jerome things. How to stay warm when you had no coat. Where to find free meals. Which alleys to avoid. "You're too young to be out here," Ray would say. "You should be in school." "Tried that," Jerome would answer. "Nobody wants me." As December came and the cold got worse, Jerome tried to survive day by day. He didn't think about the pregnant woman anymore. Didn't think about that business card he'd lost. Rich people made promises all the time that they didn't keep. He was sure she'd forgotten all about him by now. He had no way of knowing that across the city. 2 people were searching desperately for him. That Catherine checked with the investigation team every single day. That David was personally visiting shelters and soup kitchens, showing his description, asking if anyone had seen a boy named Jerome. He didn't know that the Rodriguez Foundation shelters had his description posted in every location, with instructions to call immediately if anyone matching it showed up. He couldn't have known that the woman he'd helped was 7 months pregnant and on bed rest, but still working 12-hour days trying to create programs that might save kids like him. And he definitely didn't know that his one act of kindness on a cold November night had set something in motion. Something bigger than he could imagine. Something that would eventually bring them all back together, but that was still weeks away. For now, Jerome huddled under the overpass with Ray and the others, trying to stay warm, trying to stay alive, and wondering if anyone in the world even remembered he existed. December hit Chicago like a hammer. The kind of cold that makes your bones ache. The kind that can kill you if you're not careful. Jerome learned just how dangerous it could be when he woke up one morning to find the old woman who slept near him wasn't moving. Ray checked on her and just shook his head. They called 911, but everyone knew it was too late. The cold had taken her during the night. "This is why you gotta stay vigilant," Ray told Jerome as they watched the ambulance drive away. "Out here, you let your guard down for one night and that's it." Jerome couldn't stop shaking. Not just from the cold, from the reality of how close he was to the edge. Every single day, the community under the overpass was small, but they looked out for each other. There was Ray, the veteran who'd become like a mentor to Jerome. There was Patricia, a woman in her 40s who'd lost her job and her apartment in the same month. There was Miguel, who was only 17 but had been on the streets since he was 14. And there were others who came and went, some finding help, some just disappearing. They shared what little they had. When someone got food, they'd divide it up. When someone found blankets or warm clothes, they'd make sure the weakest got them first. It wasn't much, but it was something. One evening, Jerome noticed a young mother with 2 small kids huddling in the corner of the overpass. The children couldn't have been more than 4 and 6 years old. They were shivering so hard their teeth were chattering. The mother looked desperate. Lost. Jerome had gotten a donated coat from a church just 2 days earlier. It was worn but warm. The first real coat he'd had since giving his to Catherine. He looked at it, then at those kids, then back at the coat. Ray saw what he was thinking. "Don't do it, Jerome. You need that coat. It's gonna get colder." But Jerome was already walking over to the family. He remembered being cold. He remembered what it felt like to think nobody cared. He gave the mother his coat and helped them find a spot closer to the heat vents where warm air came up from the subway below. "You're gonna freeze?" the woman said, tears in her eyes. "I'll be okay," Jerome said. "Just keep those babies warm." Ray just shook his head when Jerome came back. "You got too big a heart, kid. That's gonna get you in trouble one day." "Maybe," Jerome said, pulling his thin sweatshirt tighter. "But I can't just watch kids freeze." What Jerome didn't know was that across the city, David Rodriguez was having a similar awakening. Each visit to the shelters changed him a little more. He saw himself in these kids. Saw what he might have become if he hadn't gotten lucky breaks at the right times. He started making changes to his life. He cut back on fancy dinners and expensive watches. Instead, he was spending 3 evenings a week at various shelters and outreach centers. His security team hated it, but David insisted. One night, he was at a distribution center where his foundation was handing out winter supplies. Coats, blankets, hot meals. He was personally helping load supplies into a van when he overheard 2 outreach workers talking. "Did you hear about that kid under the highway overpass?" One was saying. "Gave away his coat to a mom with 2 little ones. Now he's got nothing." "Which overpass?" David asked immediately, they told him. David's heart started racing. Could it be? He got the address and made his security team drive him there right away. When they arrived, it was getting dark. David saw the small community under the overpass, people huddled around heat vents, makeshift shelters made from cardboard and tarps. His heart broke all over again. He started walking through, his security team nervous but following. He was looking for a teenage boy, asking if anyone had seen someone named Jerome. Then he saw him. A kid sitting with an older man, both of them hunched against the cold. The boy was thin, wearing just a hoodie in December. He was helping an elderly woman wrap a blanket around herself properly. David's breath caught. It had to be him. The description matched. The age was right. And that act of helping someone else, even when you had nothing yourself, that was exactly what Catherine had described. He started walking toward them, his hand already reaching for his phone to call Catherine. But before he could get close, police cars pulled up with their lights flashing. "Everyone up!" an officer shouted. "This area is being cleared. It's a safety violation." "You all need to move along," chaos erupted. People scrambling to grab their belongings. Some running, some arguing with the police. David tried to push through the crowd, but there were too many people. His security team pulled him back for his own safety. "Wait," David shouted. "That boy? I need to talk to that boy." But Jerome was already gone, disappeared into the crowd with Ray. They'd learned long ago that when police showed up, you didn't stick around to ask questions. You just moved. By the time things settled down, the overpass was empty. David stood there frustrated, so close but yet so far. He didn't even know for sure if that was Jerome. He thought it was, but in the chaos and dim light, he couldn't be certain. He went home that night and told Catherine everything. "I think I saw him. I really think it was him. But he got away before I could talk to him." Catherine was 8 months pregnant now, getting close to her due date. She should have been resting, but instead she was more determined than ever. "We'll find him," she said. "We have to." She started working with outreach teams directly, giving them Jerome's description, telling them if anyone sees a boy matching it, call immediately. Don't let him leave. Do whatever it takes to help him. Meanwhile, Jerome and Ray found themselves homeless again. The overpass had been their home for weeks, and now it was gone. They walked through the freezing night looking for somewhere new to sleep. "I heard about this new shelter," Miguel told them. He'd been cleared out from the overpass too. "The Rodriguez Foundation, I think it's called. They say they don't turn kids away." No matter what, Ray encouraged Jerome to try it. "You're too young for this life, Jerome. You should be in school. Let these people help you." But Jerome was hesitant. He'd tried shelters before. They always had rules he couldn't follow, paperwork he didn't have, questions he couldn't answer. And they usually didn't take 15-year-olds without a guardian. "This one's different," Miguel insisted. "I heard the guy who runs it, some tech billionaire, he made sure nobody gets turned away. They actually want to help." Jerome didn't believe in rich people wanting to help. Rich people didn't see kids like him. But he was getting sick. He could feel it. His chest hurt when he breathed. He was coughing a lot. And he was so cold. 3 days after the overpass was cleared, Jerome made a decision. He was walking past one of the Rodriguez Foundation shelters when his legs just gave out. He collapsed on the sidewalk outside, feverish and exhausted. A shelter coordinator named Diana was coming outside when she saw him fall. She rushed over immediately. "Hey, honey, are you okay? Can you hear me?" Jerome tried to answer but started coughing instead. Diana didn't waste time. She called for help and they got Jerome inside. Warm air hit his face like a blessing. They sat him down, gave him hot soup, wrapped him in blankets. "What's your name, sweetie?" Diana asked gently. "Jerome," he managed between coughs. "Okay, Jerome, you're safe now. We're going to take care of you." Over the next few days, Jerome recovered from a bad respiratory infection. The shelter had a nurse who checked on him regularly. They gave him warm clothes that actually fit. 3 hot meals a day. A real bed with clean sheets. For the first time in months, Jerome felt safe. Diana was patient with him. She didn't push. She let him settle in, let him see that this place was different, that they really did want to help. Slowly, Jerome started to open up. He told her about his grandmother, about foster care, about living on the streets. He mentioned Ray and Patricia and Miguel. He talked about the cold and the hunger and the fear. And then, almost as an afterthought, he mentioned the pregnant woman. "This one time," Jerome said, "back in November, I helped this lady who was stranded. Her car broke down and she was having problems with her baby. I ran to get help." Diana's hand froze in the middle of writing notes. "A pregnant woman? In November?" "Yeah. She was really nice. Gave me her card and told me to call her. But I lost it." Diana's heart was pounding. She'd been at the shelter opening when Catherine Rodriguez spoke. She'd heard the story about the mysterious boy who'd saved her life. Could this be him? "Jerome," Diana said carefully, "do you remember what the woman looked like?" Jerome described Catherine. "The car, the location, everything." Diana stood up. "Jerome, honey, I need to make a phone call. Stay right here." "Have some more soup?" "I'll be right back." She went to her office and with shaking hands, she dialed David Rodriguez's personal number. He'd given it to all the shelter staff with instructions to call any time if they found Jerome. He answered on the first ring. "David Rodriguez." "Mr. Rodriguez," Diana said, her voice trembling. "I think we found him. I think Jerome is here." David nearly dropped his phone. "What? Are you sure?" "He just told me about helping a pregnant woman in November," Diana said, speaking fast. Stranded car, flat tire, he ran to get help. "Mr. Rodriguez, it has to be him." "Don't let him leave," David said, already grabbing his coat. "We're on our way." He hung up and rushed to find Catherine. She was in the nursery they'd been setting up, folding tiny baby clothes. She looked up. When he burst through the door, and the expression on his face told her everything. "You found him?" she whispered. David nodded, not trusting his voice. Catherine's hand went to her belly, now 9 months pregnant. "Let's go," she said. "Catherine, you're due any day now." "Maybe you should." "David Rodriguez, don't you dare finish that sentence. I've been looking for this boy for 2 months. I'm coming." The drive to the shelter felt like it took forever. Catherine kept her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move inside her. "We found him," she whispered to her daughter. "We finally found him." When they pulled up to the Rodriguez Foundation Youth Shelter, Diana was waiting at the door. "He's in the common room," she said quietly. "Mr. Rodriguez, Mrs. Rodriguez, he doesn't know you're coming. I didn't want to overwhelm him." Catherine nodded, suddenly nervous. What if Jerome didn't remember her? What if he was angry that it took so long to find him? What if he didn't want their help? They walked through the shelter. It was warm inside, filled with the smell of dinner cooking. Young people were scattered around, some watching TV, some doing homework, some just talking. This was David's dream made real. A safe place where kids didn't have to be cold or hungry or scared, and there, sitting on a couch in donated clothes that were too big for his thin frame, was Jerome. He was talking quietly with another boy, a cup of hot chocolate in his hands. He looked tired, sick, but alive. Catherine's breath caught in her throat. That was him. The boy who'd saved her life. Jerome looked up and saw them approaching. He didn't recognize them at first. Then his eyes went wide. You, he breathed, staring at Catherine. You're the lady from the car. Catherine couldn't help it. She started crying. She walked over, and before Jerome could even stand up, she wrapped him in a hug. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you for saving us. Jerome sat there, stiff and confused, as this pregnant woman he'd helped months ago held on to him like he was precious. No one had hugged him like that since his grandmother died. David came over, his own eyes wet. He put his hand on Jerome's shoulder. Son, we've been looking everywhere for you. You have? Jerome asked, his voice small. He pulled back from Catherine, wiping his eyes. But why? That was months ago. I figured you forgot about me. Forget about you? Catherine laughed through her tears. Jerome, you gave me your coat in the middle of winter. You ran through the freezing cold to get help. You saved my baby's life? How could we ever forget that? Jerome looked down at his hands. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, David said firmly, not anyone. Most people would have kept walking. But you stopped. You helped. Even though you had nothing, you gave everything. They sat down with Jerome and just talked. Diana brought them all hot chocolate and quietly left them alone. Jerome told them everything that had happened after that night. About getting robbed and losing the business card. About moving to a different part of the city. About living under the overpass and nearly freezing to death. I gave away the coat someone gave me, Jerome admitted. There was this mom with 2 little kids and they were so cold. I couldn't just... Of course you couldn't, Catherine said softly. Because that's who you are. David listened to Jerome's story and felt his heart breaking and swelling at the same time. This kid had been through so much. Lost his grandmother. Failed by the system. Living on the streets at 15, and through it all he'd kept his humanity, kept helping others even when he needed help himself. Jerome, David said carefully, we'd like to help you, if you'll let us. Jerome looked suspicious. He'd learned not to trust offers that sounded too good. Help me how? Well, for starters, you're staying here at the shelter, Catherine said. Diana tells me you've been sick. You need to get better. And we need to figure out your legal situation so you can get back in school. School? Jerome's voice was bitter. I don't have a guardian. I'm in the system. Nobody wants to deal with that. We do, David said simply. Jerome, you saved my wife and my daughter. The least we can do is make sure you have a chance at a real future. Jerome wanted to believe them, but he'd been disappointed too many times. Why? Why do you care? You're rich. You've got everything. I'm just some homeless kid you don't even know. David leaned forward. You want to know why I care? Because I was poor once too. Really poor. I got lucky. I worked hard, sure, but I also got chances that a lot of kids don't get. And I look at you and I see someone who deserves those chances. Someone who's already shown more character than most adults I know. I saw how you helped that woman in the shelter wrap her blanket, Catherine added. Diana told us you gave away your coat to a mother with children. Jerome, you have something special. Something that can't be taught. You care about people. And the world needs more people like you. Jerome felt tears burning his eyes. He didn't want to cry in front of them, but he couldn't help it. I don't want charity, he said quietly. This isn't charity, David said. You gave us something we can never repay. Our daughter's life? But we'd like to try. We'd like to help you build a future. Go to school. Maybe college someday if you want. We're not trying to replace your grandmother or be your parents. We just want to help you get the chances you deserve. Jerome looked at them both. Catherine, ready to have a baby any day, who'd spent 2 months searching for him. David, who'd built an entire shelter system because of what he'd seen while looking for one homeless kid. They seemed genuine. They seemed like they really cared. What if I mess up? Jerome asked, his voice cracking. What if I'm not what you think I am? Then we'll figure it out together, Catherine said. Jerome, everyone messes up. That's part of being human. But you deserve people in your corner. People who believe in you? They talked for another hour. David explained what he was offering. A spot at the shelter while they worked out the legal details. Tutoring to catch up on school. Eventually, enrollment at a good school. Support, guidance, a chance. I need to think about it, Jerome said finally. He was overwhelmed, scared, hopeful, all at the same time. Of course, David said. Take all the time you need. We're not going anywhere. As they got up to leave, Catherine suddenly gasped and grabbed her belly. David was at her side instantly. Catherine? What is it? I think, she said, breathing hard. I think the baby's coming. Diana called 911 while David helped Catherine to a chair. Jerome stood there frozen, watching this couple who'd come looking for him now dealing with a medical emergency. Go with her, Jerome said to David. She needs you. We'll come back, David promised. As soon as we can. Jerome, please don't leave. Stay here. We'll come back. The ambulance arrived and took Catherine and David away. Jerome stood at the shelter door, watching the lights disappear into the night. Just like last time Diana came up beside him. They mean it, you know. They really will come back, maybe, Jerome said quietly. Definitely, Diana corrected. I've worked for Mr. Rodriguez for 3 months now. I've never seen anyone so determined. He spent weeks looking for you, visiting every shelter, every soup kitchen. He didn't give up. Jerome went back inside, his mind spinning. Part of him wanted to run. It was safer not to hope. Safer not to trust. But another part of him, the part that had stopped to help a stranger on a cold November night, whispered that maybe, just maybe, these people were different. He went to the room Diana had given him. A real room with a real bed. He lay down on sheets that smelled clean and pulled a warm blanket over himself. Through the window, he could see snow starting to fall, somewhere across the city. Catherine was bringing a new life into the world. And Jerome was lying in a warm bed, safe for the first time in months, wondering if maybe his life was about to change too. He thought about his grandmother, about what she'd always told him. Do good, Jerome. Help people. That's what matters. He'd helped someone that cold November night. And now, maybe that help was coming back around. Maybe good things really did happen to good people. Sometimes Jerome couldn't sleep that night. He kept thinking about Catherine and David, wondering if the baby was okay, wondering if they'd really come back like they promised by morning. He'd half convinced himself they wouldn't. It had been nice to see Catherine again, to know she was okay. But people like that, they had their own lives, their own problems. Why would they really care about some kid from the streets? He was eating breakfast in the shelter dining room when Diana came running in, her face lit up with a huge smile. Jerome, they're here. His heart jumped. Who's here? The Rodriguez family. All 3 of them. Jerome followed Diana to the lobby, his hands shaking. And there they were. David looked exhausted but happy. And Catherine was sitting in a wheelchair, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. Jerome! Catherine called out when she saw him. Her eyes were tired but glowing. Come meet someone. Jerome walked over slowly, not sure what to do. He'd never been around babies much. Catherine pulled back the blanket to reveal a tiny face, eyes closed, perfect little hands curled into fists. This is Hope, Catherine said softly. Hope Marina Rodriguez. She's really small, Jerome whispered. She is, Catherine agreed. But she's healthy and strong. And Jerome, we gave her the middle name Marina. That was your grandmother's name, wasn't it? Jerome's eyes went wide. How did you ... You told Diana, Catherine said. We wanted to honor the woman who raised such an incredible young man. And we wanted our daughter to carry that strength with her. Jerome couldn't speak. He just stared at this tiny baby who carried his grandmother's name. Tears rolled down his cheeks and he didn't even try to stop them. There's something else we want to ask you, David said gently. Jerome, would you be Hope's godfather? Jerome looked up confused. Her what? Her godfather, Catherine explained. It means you'd be part of her life, part of our family, someone she can count on, someone we trust to help guide her as she grows up. Oh, but I'm nobody, Jerome said, his voice breaking. I don't have anything. I don't even have a home. You're not nobody, David said firmly. You're the person who saved my wife and daughter when they needed help most. You're someone who gives away his coat to strangers, who helps people even when you have nothing. That's exactly the kind of person we want in our daughter's life. Jerome looked at the baby again. She was so tiny, so perfect. Yes, he whispered. I'd be honored. Over the next few weeks, things moved fast. David hired lawyers to sort out Jerome's legal situation. They worked with social services to get him proper documentation. It turned out that with the right resources and the right push, a lot of bureaucratic problems could be solved. Jerome stayed at the shelter. But now he had regular visits with Catherine, David, and baby Hope. They'd pick him up and take him to their house for dinner. At first, Jerome was scared to touch anything. Everything was so nice, so expensive, but they made him feel welcome. This is weird, Jerome admitted one evening as they sat in the living room. He was holding Hope, who'd fallen asleep in his arms. Like, really weird. What do you mean? Catherine asked, smiling. A few months ago, I was sleeping on cardboard. Now I'm sitting in a mansion holding a baby named after my grandma. It doesn't feel real. It's real, David assured him. And Jerome, we want to talk to you about school. Jerome tensed. He'd been dreading this conversation. I'm way behind. I haven't been to school in almost a year. We know, David said. That's why we've arranged for tutors. You'll catch up. And when you're ready, there's a spot for you at Preston Academy. It's a good school, challenging, but they've agreed to give you all the support you need. That's a rich kid's school, Jerome protested. I won't fit in there. Maybe not at first, Catherine admitted. But you're smart, Jerome. Diana showed us some of the reading you've been doing at the shelter. You love learning. This is your chance to really pursue that. Jerome was terrified, but he was also starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could do this. He started working with tutors 3 times a week. Math, English, science, history. It was hard at first. There were huge gaps in his knowledge. But he worked harder than he'd ever worked at anything. By February, Jerome was ready to start at Preston Academy. His first day was torture. Kids stared at him. They whispered. Everyone knew his story because it had been in the news. That's the homeless kid the Rodriguez family took in, they'd say. But Jerome kept his head down and focused on his work. And slowly, things got better. He made a friend named Tyler who didn't care about where Jerome came from. He joined the robotics club and discovered he had a talent for engineering. His grades improved steadily. David checked in with him every week, sometimes taking him to Rodriguez Tech Industries to show him real-world applications of what he was learning. This is what math looks like when you use it to solve actual problems, David would say, showing him code and algorithms. Catherine included Jerome in family dinners, holidays, birthday celebrations. Hope's first smile was for Jerome when he was holding her. He had a photo of it on his phone, and sometimes he'd look at it when school got hard and remember why he was pushing himself. Ray, the veteran from under the overpass, got a job through the Rodriguez Foundation as an outreach coordinator. He'd find kids on the streets and help connect them to services. He and Jerome stayed in touch, meeting for lunch once a month. Look at you, Ray said one day, grinning at Jerome in his school uniform. Never thought I'd see the day. I still can't believe it sometimes, Jerome admitted. I keep waiting to wake up back under the overpass. It's real, kid, Ray said. You earned this. You helped someone when it mattered, and the universe paid you back. 2 years passed. Jerome thrived at Preston Academy. He was 17 now, taller, healthier, more confident. He'd become passionate about addressing homelessness and worked with the Rodriguez Foundation on weekends, using his own experience to help design better programs. At a foundation gala, Jerome was asked to speak. He stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of wealthy donors. 2 years ago, these people would have walked past him on the street without a second glance. I was 15 years old and living in a cardboard box when I met Mrs. Rodriguez, Jerome began. I was cold, hungry, and invisible. But when I saw someone who needed help, I didn't think about what I didn't have. I just thought about what I could do. He told them about that November night, about giving away his coat and blanket, about running through the freezing cold to get help. I didn't help her because I expected anything in return, Jerome continued. I helped her because it was the right thing to do. Because my grandmother raised me to believe that we're all connected. That when one person hurts, we all hurt. And when one person helps another, we all rise. He looked at Catherine and David sitting in the front row with Hope, now 2 years old, between them. But what happened after changed my life? The Rodriguez family didn't just help me. They believed in me. They showed me that one act of kindness can ripple out in ways you never imagine. Jerome's voice got stronger. There are thousands of kids on the streets right now. Smart kids. Kind kids. Kids who would give you their last dollar if you needed it. They're not there because they're bad or lazy. They're there because the system failed them. Because they aged out of foster care. Because their families couldn't support them. Because life got hard and they had nowhere to turn. The room was silent, everyone hanging on his words. Here's what I've learned, Jerome said. Compassion isn't about how much money you have. It's not about where you live or what you wear. It's about seeing the humanity in every person you meet. That night I didn't see a rich woman in an expensive car. I saw a scared person who needed help. And when the Rodriguez family found me, they didn't see a homeless kid. They saw someone worth believing in. He paused, looking around the room. That's the world we need to build. Where everyone looks out for each other. Where no kid has to sleep in the cold. Where everyone gets a chance to show what they're capable of. Because I promise you, there are hundreds of kids out there just like me. Kids with potential, with dreams, with so much to offer. They just need someone to give them a chance. The applause was thunderous. People were crying. Jerome saw Catherine wiping her eyes, David beaming with pride, and little Hope clapping her hands even though she didn't really understand why after the speech. People lined up to talk to Jerome, to shake his hand, to write checks to the foundation. But the moment that mattered most came when a teenage girl approached him nervously. I've been living in my car for 3 months, she whispered. Can you help me? Jerome smiled and put his hand on her shoulder. Yes, he said. Absolutely yes. Come with me. Years later, Jerome graduated from MIT with honors in engineering. He turned down high-paying corporate jobs to start his own nonprofit, developing technology solutions for homeless services. David was his first investor and remained his mentor when Jerome got married at 25. David and Catherine sat in the front row. 6-year-old Hope was the flower girl, scattering petals and giggling. Ray, now the director of outreach for the Rodriguez Foundation, was one of Jerome's GROOM Don, and when Jerome and his wife had their first child, they asked Catherine and David to be godparents, completing a circle that had started on a cold November night when a homeless boy chose kindness over self-preservation. Jerome never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the cold nights, the hunger, the fear, but he also never forgot what he'd learned, that one person, one choice, one moment of compassion could change everything. He'd helped a stranger when he had nothing. And that stranger had helped him build a life beyond his wildest dreams. Not because he expected it. Not because he deserved it more than anyone else. But because sometimes when you put good into the world, good comes back to you, and that was a lesson worth passing on.